There is something happening inside you that most people will never figure out about themselves. Not because they are not intelligent. Not because the information does not exist. But because the truth about distraction is quietly uncomfortable, and most people would rather believe they just need to put their phone in another room. They won't. Because the problem is not the phone. Today, I'm going to walk you through 5 hidden traits that are almost always present in people who struggle with focus. These are not the traits you'll find on a motivational poster. They are the ones that live underneath the surface, the psychological architecture that makes distraction feel, on some level, like relief. Stay with me. By the end of this, you are going to understand something about yourself that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Trait 1. You are not distracted. You are escaping. Here is something that nobody tells you about distraction. It does not happen randomly. It is not a glitch. It is a response. Every time you sit down to do something that matters, write the email, start the project, have the hard conversation, your brain does a very fast, very quiet calculation. It asks, how threatening is this task? How much uncertainty does it carry? How likely am I to fail, or be judged, or find out something unflattering about myself? And if the answer is high enough, your brain does the only logical thing it knows how to do. It leaves. Not physically. You are still sitting there. But mentally, neurologically, it redirects your attention towards something that costs less. A notification. A thought about what to eat later. A sudden, inexplicable need to reorganize your desk. This is not weakness. This is protection. The problem is that the brain does not distinguish between protection from real danger and protection from discomfort. It responds to the anxiety of a blank page the same way it responds to a threat in a dark alley. Flight is flight. People who are easily distracted are almost always people who are running from something specific. Not life in general. Something specific. A fear of inadequacy. A fear of finishing something and having it judged. A fear of starting something and finding out it is harder than they thought. The distraction is the symptom. The fear is the disease. Trait 2. Your nervous system is wired for high stimulation. Some people can sit in silence and feel nothing but calm. Others sit in silence and feel like they are suffocating. If you are the second type, it is important to understand that this is not a character flaw. It is biology. And it is one of the most common hidden drivers of distraction that almost nobody talks about. People with high stimulation nervous systems process the world more intensely. Everything noise, emotion, social tension, creative pressure hits harder and registers deeper. Because of this, their baseline need for input is higher than the average person's. Stillness does not feel peaceful to them. It feels like deprivation. So they fill it. Constantly. With noise, content, conversation, chaos. Not because they are lazy. Because their brain is genuinely, biologically uncomfortable in low stimulation environments. Here is where it becomes a trap. The modern world is perfectly designed to feed this need. Every platform you use, every app, every feed, every notification system is engineered by teams of psychologists and data scientists to deliver exactly the right amount of stimulation to keep your nervous system engaged and coming back. They know your threshold. They designed the product around it. So if you have a high stimulation nervous system, you are not just fighting your own biology. You are fighting billion-dollar systems that were built specifically to exploit it. That is not a fair fight. And pretending it is a willpower problem is one of the most convenient lies the attention economy ever told you. Trait 3. You have an uncomfortable relationship with boredom. Boredom is not a neutral state. For most easily distracted people, boredom is physically aversive. It produces a kind of low-grade psychological pain, a restlessness, irritability, a creeping sense that time is being wasted or that something important is being missed. This matters more than it sounds. Research has consistently shown that the ability to tolerate boredom is one of the strongest predictors of focused, sustained work. People who can sit with boredom, who can stay in the discomfort of slow progress, uncertain outcomes, and unglamorous tasks, are the ones who finish things. People who cannot tolerate it will always find a way out. But here is the part that is rarely examined. The aversion to boredom is almost never about boredom itself. It is about what boredom forces you to encounter. When external stimulation is removed, what is left? For many people, the answer is uncomfortable. Unprocessed thoughts surface. Doubts about direction, meaning, and self-worth begin to rise. Old anxieties that were successfully buried under activity and noise suddenly have room to breathe. Distraction, then, is not just entertainment. It is emotional maintenance. It keeps the inner world manageable by keeping the outer world loud. The person who cannot stop scrolling is not necessarily someone who loves content. They are often someone who deeply fears what they would think about if the content stopped. Trait 4. You have a complicated relationship with completion. This one is subtle. And it is one of the most psychologically layered traits on this list. Some people are distracted not because they fear starting, but because they fear finishing. Completion is a moment of judgment. When something is done, it can be evaluated. It can be compared. It can fall short. As long as something remains unfinished, it exists in a protected state, a state of pure potential where it has not yet failed to meet expectations. Unconsciously, many people engineer their own incompletion. They get close to finishing something meaningful and suddenly become distracted by 10 other things. The apartment needs cleaning. A different project suddenly feels more urgent. A vague sense of fatigue sets in that was not there an hour ago. This is not procrastination in the traditional sense. This is self-protection dressed as productivity. There is also another layer. Some people struggle with completion because finishing something means it is over and the process itself has been the source of identity, purpose, or meaning. The writer who never finishes the book gets to remain a writer with a book in progress forever. The entrepreneur who never launches the product never has to find out if it would have worked. Incompletion becomes a strategy. A way of staying safe. A way of maintaining a self-concept that has never been tested by reality. If you notice that you consistently get close to finishing things and then sabotage yourself or drift away, it is worth sitting with this question: what would it mean if you finished and it was not enough? Trait 5. Your identity is partially built on being someone who struggles. This is the one people resist the most. For some people, being easily distracted is not just a problem they have. It is a story they tell. A piece of how they understand themselves. Sometimes it has even become a social currency, a relatable quirk that connects them to others, generates sympathy, or serves as a built-in explanation for why things have not gone as planned. Identity is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. And it is largely invisible. When your identity includes the belief that you are someone who cannot focus, who gets distracted, who struggles to finish things, who needs more stimulation than others, your behavior will organize itself around protecting that story. Not because you are dishonest, but because the brain is not designed for self-contradiction. We act in ways that confirm who we believe we are. This means that before any system, strategy, or productivity technique can truly work for you, something deeper has to shift. You have to stop being a person who struggles with distraction and start being a person who is learning how to focus. These sound like the same thing. They are not. One is a fixed identity. The other is a process. And the difference between them is the difference between trying to change while quietly believing you cannot and actually changing. I want to be careful here. I am not telling you that focus is easy if you just think the right thoughts. I am not selling you a morning routine. What I am telling you is this. If you have spent years believing that distraction is your default setting, that your brain is just wired differently and there is not much to be done, you may have been working from an incomplete map. Distraction at this level is almost always rooted in something emotional. Fear of failure. A nervous system seeking relief. An unconscious resistance to completion. An identity that has quietly decided this is just who you are. None of these things are permanent. None of them are your fault. but all of them require honesty to address. The first step is simply to stop treating distraction as a logistical problem and start treating it as information. What is the distraction telling you? What is it protecting you from? What would you have to face if it stopped working? Those questions are uncomfortable. They are also the only ones worth asking. Because the people who solve this, who genuinely develop the capacity for deep, sustained focus, do not do it by finding the perfect app or the right productivity system. They do it by getting honest about what is actually going on. And that starts with understanding the hidden traits driving the pattern in the first place. Now you have them. What you do next is entirely up to you. If this video gave you even one moment of genuine clarity, take 3 seconds and hit the like button. Leave a comment below and tell me which of the 5 traits hit closest to home. And if you want to keep going deeper, then subscribe. I will see you in the next one.